Remember, in Yahweh declaring his being, I'll say it like that. In Yahweh declaring his being to his people, what he said to Moshe when Moshe asked the question, who shall I say? Who shall I say? He said, tell them, Eheye Asher Eheye. What is he saying? That I am that which I am. In all tenses, I am currently whoever I will need to be, who I would have been at any point to provide and to sustain this entire universe. What is he? You know, as a kid, I remember my mom said to me one day, you know, God is everywhere. And I was like, okay, he's everywhere. And I remember being at school. I was in elementary school at the time. As a matter of fact, I had to be between kindergarten and second grade because I was still in New York. And so I remember, you know, repeating that to a kid. And he was like, oh, well, what about this chocolate cake right here? And that stumped me. I was like, is God in chocolate cake? It sure tastes good. So I guess that answers the scripture that says, oh, taste and see. But I remember thinking that, you know, he's everywhere. And from then I was confused on what that meant. He's everywhere. And then, of course, that extends to he's everything. And so he's everything. What does that mean? We say that. But what does that mean? That is pivotal to understand as we go through these series of teachings. And real quick, I left my notebook over there. If someone can grab that for me, that'd be great. It's in my book bag, which is over there. I thought I had everything. I did not have everything. The big part. Yeah, so it's very important that we lay that foundation. That Yahweh being everything we need in all tenses. Everything being that when it comes up, he has already made provision for it. And because it was in the past, that is the proof that he can be that. And so there's no end. This is why we've yet to come to the end of the universe. There is it's called Olam. There's an Olam that continues. It's where forever ends, it starts over. That's what eternity is, Olam. Where it ends, its ending point is its beginning point. So where it ends, it begins. It starts the forever right back over again. It's a cycle that never ends. And so we can't get to the fullest. That's what Moshe asked for. When he says, Yahweh, show me your kavod, your glory. He didn't just ask to see his face. Everybody goes crazy over that. Oh, can't see Yahweh's face, live. Because he showed Moses, he said, you cannot live. And so that wasn't really what he was getting at. What he's getting at is he's saying Moshe asked to see all of Yahweh. He asked to see Yahweh's weight. He asked for that word that's used there is glory, kavod, or esteem. It means weight. He asked for the complete weight of Yahweh. And Yahweh said, I can't show you everything. But what I can show you, I will. And then think about what happened to Moshe from that point. He began to speak with Yahweh, and Yahweh's essence began to transfer to him. It says that he shone, his face began to shine in such a way that the people were afraid. They had to put a veil on his face. And so understanding that Yahweh is everything is where we want to go from. He is everything. I am that which I am. And so this is what we're going to look at as we go through these messages. The stages of life. What we're looking at is the places that we find ourselves while being in relationship with the Master, with the Creator. The places at which we find ourselves while being and building relationship with the Master, with the Creator. And so the 4 stages, and you know, again, this is looking at Scripture and my trying to put into a context in which we can follow. But this is, I can't in any way say that this is all comprehensive. But I do believe that we can fit just about every relationship with Yahweh into these 4 places. And so one is understanding Yahweh as Adonai. That's where we're going to begin. The next is going to be understanding Yahweh as Reah, which is when Yahweh says, I am your friend. Adonai being master. Then we're going to go into Yahweh being Ab, which is father. I am your father. And then we're going to go into Yahweh Ish, which is husband. And so Yahweh, if you look at relationship descriptions in the Scripture, basically these are the ones we see. We see Yahweh calling us servants, which makes him what? Master. We see Yahweh calling us friend, which makes him what? Friend. We see Yahweh calling us children, which makes him what? We see Yahweh calling us bride, which makes him what? Husband. And so we're going to go through these, and we're going to start again with Adonai. Yahweh is our master. Now, as we go through each time, this is the stage that we'll try to pull out, or the places, as we go through the stages, we'll pull out to understand these particular things. We want to understand the roles that are played. And these, if you really think about it, this is important to understanding relationship in general. Like, if we're not talking about Yahweh, I can use this same format for, trying to get a husband and a wife to communicate better, trying to get a brother and a sister to communicate better, trying to get friends to communicate better. It's important to understand each other's roles, right? Because when you have clear defined roles, then you can hold accountable. You can hold each other accountable to those roles. And then there's no misunderstanding when one doesn't fulfill a role that really doesn't exist, or some piece that you're expecting that you shouldn't be. You don't have to worry about all of this disappointment because you have a better understanding of your roles. Understanding the next one is going to be the qualities. We're going to look at the qualities and how that quality now helps in making that role a place that you can actually carry out, where it's not expectations that are, beyond what they should be. And the next is examples. Examples, both positive and negative. We're actually going to look at positive and negative. We're going to look at places where the examples of these roles and qualities coming into place gives positive results, and when the roles and qualities in these examples yield negative results. Okay? So everybody with me? A little bit, maybe? So okay? Everybody with me? All right, let's go. Adonai, stages of life. I am which that I am, Adonai. What does Adonai mean? Master. That's right. So stages of life. At this point, Defining roles. Yahweh is master. We are servants. That's simple enough. That's simple enough. Understanding now qualities. What are qualities of a master that makes a good master? Well, these are the things that a master should be doing. Provision, protection, guidance, fairness, compassion, trustworthiness, clarity, wisdom, vision. These are things that this master, if he or she is carrying out their role as master, they're good at these things. They should be. They should seek to be good at these things. It's good to know that if you are a servant, your master provides, protects, guides you. Your master is fair. Your master has compassion. Why? We're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We want a master who can relate. Trustworthiness. Why does a master have to be trustworthy? Because you are at the mercy of this master. You have to be able to trust that master. And that master should prove that they can be trusted. Clarity. It's important because sometimes you as the servant might not be sure of what the end goal is. But if the master, who has the understanding of what they're trying to accomplish, gives you clarity, then you can function better as a servant. Wisdom. You want a wise master. Why? Because life, unfortunately, does not give you all the answers. Sometimes it takes wisdom to get to the end result because there was no blueprint on how this should be carried out already. There's no precedence. So without precedence, we need wisdom and then vision. If that master ain't got no vision, there is a problem. There's a problem. Now, what are the qualities that the servant should possess? Qualities for that servant. You need a servant who understands these things. Obedience, submission, loyalty, honesty, dedication, work ethic, and trusting. It's the other side of trustworthy. It don't matter how trustworthy the master is. If the servant is not trusting, they're going to second guess everything the master says. Everything the master says. I'm hoping this is starting to paint a picture. We're going to keep going. Let's look at the word Adonai. That's used for master. It's H136. And its Brown Driver's Briggs definition is my Lord. Lord. The related is a root word of Adonai is Adon. And that's H113. That word means firm, strong, Lord or master. We can understand that. Firm, strong. That's what we need a master to be. Let's look at the flip side of that. Servant. This word is abad. And it's H5650. In this word, you have slave or servant. Slave, servant, manservant, subjects. Servants or worshipers. Now, a word that it's related to, not the root word of Abec, but a related word of Abec is abad, and it is H5647. So you can always tell by the numbers too if they're related. That means that understand that in Hebrew you don't have vowels, right? So you have all of the strong sounds, and then you have some of the softer sounds, such as the aleph, the aish, the different things like that. iron, sorry. And so this, if you're finding a word that's, if it's close to it, the meanings will be somewhat close as well. So, but the word that's related, a related word, is to work or to serve, to labor, to do work, to work for another, to serve another, to serve as subjects, to serve as Elohim, or with Levitical service. So let's look at master who has a servant means that they have been acquired. In some form or fashion, a master acquires servants. And so if this be the case, most times, a lot of times, there is some type of purchase that's been made. And even more so, even if it was a gift, even more so, there is ownership. There's ownership. So a master acquiring servants means that that master has ownership of said servant. So let's look at Psalms 74 and 2 real quick. Psalm 74 and 2. And it says, remember your congregation, you did purchase of old. The tribe of your inheritance, you did redeem. This Mount Zion, where you have dwelt. Let me ask this question. What is the cost of sin? Death. That's how much sin costs. So if I go to the store and I want a Twix, and the man say, okay, that'll be $1. Now I can do my whole Chris Rock thing. Good Lord, that's a lot of money. How about I give you 50 cents for just one of them? What is he gonna say? It's $1. So you got two choices. Give me $1 or put my Twix back down, bro. But either way, it's $1. You gonna pay $1? Somebody else gonna pay $1. Now, what if somebody else real nice comes in and says, oh, you like Twix? I love Twix. I'm gonna buy 2 and give you 1. They give you 1. They have paid for that. Is it yours? They've given it to you. They've given it to you, but they've purchased it. But they've given it to you. If we want to willfully and freely sin, you can. You just gotta die. That's how much it costs to freely, I don't care about consequence, sin. It costs death. It costs our lives. And so, how many people can pay that price? How many people can afford that price and continue with their life? Cost everything. You have nothing when it's done. When you're finished paying for it, you can't live. And so, put a pin in it right there. Masters acquiring. Thus, there is ownership. Let's go to Romans. And we're going to read from chapter 5. We're going to read 11 through 17. And then we'll skip down. I think we'll skip down after that. But let's start at Romans 5, chapter 5, verse 11. And not only this, but we also exalt in Elohim through our Master Yeshua Messiah, through whom we have now received the restoration to favor. You've been restored. 12. For this reason, even as through one man sin did enter into the world, and death through sin. Y'all see how that happened? Sin entered the world, and what came as a result of sin? Death. Was Adam and Hava created to die? No. No, but because of sin, there's now death, right? And so continuing in verse 12, and thus death spread to all men because all sinned. 13, for until the Torah, sin was in the world, but sin is not reckoned where there is no Torah. Now people would get confused by that because they don't understand the first part is defining sin. Sin is the transgression or the breaking of Torah. So what it's saying is, for until the Torah, sin was in the world, but sin did not reckon, but sin is not reckoned when there is no Torah. When there's no law, there's no sin. In other words, let's think about it like this. If I said to you, please do not hit me. Like, Rosemary, if I just walked up to you and said, please don't hit me, what's the first thought that comes to your head? You're like, I wasn't going to hit you. I don't need to lay down a law to her not to hit me because she wasn't going to hit me. So there's no need for me to lay down a law, thou, Rosemary, shall not hit Rabbi 2 while he's teaching. Like, that doesn't make any sense because she was never going to do that. I like to use this example, and I'm going to get off this real quick because we got to continue in the reading. I like to use this example. The best way I can describe this is using, and just like that, it walked out my head. What's the hiring where you have to hire a certain, No. When you have to hire a certain amount of minorities because... Affirmative action. Yes, affirmative action. If there was no racism in America, would we need affirmative action? No, because there would be no sin, so we would need no law. But because there is racism in the United States of America, there has to be a law or laws to help to make sure that people don't just freely do these things, right? And so if there was no discrimination, there would be no affirmative action. If there was no sin, there would be no law. That's what that means. Sin is not reckoned when there is no law. When there's no law, you can't reckon it to sin. In other words, you can't give me a speeding ticket if ain't no speed limit. All right, let's continue. Chapter 5, verse 14. But death reigned from Adam until Moshe, even over those who had not sinned according to the likeness of the transgression of Adam. In other words, they didn't do exactly what Adam did, but they did something else. Who is a type of him who was to come, which is Messiah that he's speaking of. 15. But the favorable gift is not like the trespass. For if by the one man's trespass many died, opened up sin, and now death, but much more the favor of Elohim and the gift in favor of one man, Yeshua Messiah, overflowed now, same way that sin covered a whole lot of people, this sacrifice covered a whole lot of people, overflowed to many. Verse 16, and the favorable gift is not as by one having sinned, for indeed the judgment was of one to condemnation. But the favorable gift is of many trespasses unto righteousness. 17. For if by the trespass of the one death did reign through the one, much more Those who receive the overflowing favor and the gift of righteousness shall reign in life through the one Yeshua Messiah. What is that saying? He covers. His death covers. Why? Because what's the price of sin? He walked in and paid for your Twix. He walked in and paid the price that you owed for your sin. If he did that, what he said was, you are going to kill him. I will pay his debt. And what now? He belongs to me. We've been purchased. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 3. Ephesians chapter 3. Ephesians chapter 3. And what? And I'm going to just throw this. Actually, we're going to come to it, so I'm going to leave it. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 6. The Gentiles to be co-heirs, united in the same body, and partakers together in the promise in Messiah through the good news. Verse 7, of which I became a servant according to the gift of the favor of Elohim given to me, according to the working of his power. The working of his power was the ability to pay for sin, to give you a out, to pay your debt, and he continued to live. This is the importance. The importance of Yeshua's death is immense, but the importance of his rising is even greater. Because just dying, he took your sin and paid the price. But who wants to literally pay for something that they don't use? He paid for you to live. And so when he pays for that, now he has the power to live again. He could do that. We couldn't. We couldn't. So that was his power. That's why in Ephesians it says the working of his power. Now let's go back to Romans and look at that cost. Let's look at that cost. Let's look at that cost. Romans 6:22, it says, but now, having been set free from sin and having become servants of Elohim, you have your fruit resulting in set apartness and the end, everlasting life. Because that's the goal. Verse 23, for the wages of sin is death, but the favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting life in Messiah Yeshua, our Adonai, our master. He went, y'all know back in the day where they would put you on the little galley. One of my favorite little commercials is the commercial, the guy, oh man, what is it? I think it's a beer commercial. I know, it's a beer commercial, it is. And the guy is like, you know, Bud for everyone. I can't remember what it actually was. And then this guy was like, oh, I actually like a different drink. I like something. And he was like, okay, everybody, and then get this guy what he wants. And then he went in and made another request. And then sooner or later, he's like, man, you gotta go. He put him in the galley, put his arms in, you know, the thing is gonna cut his head off and everything. It's hilarious if you ever see it. But if somebody comes along and says, you know what, I'll pay his debt. Because that's what they, like, you owe. You owe the king, you owe the kingdom, you owe taxes, you owe whatever it is. Yeah, they didn't just send the IRS after you. It was a little different back then. They was going to take it out of your hind parts. And so they was going to get their money one way or another. And so they would torture they would at some point, you so indebted, they just gonna kill you and take all your stuff. So this is like Yeshua coming, seeing you have gotten in over your head, you owe more than you can pay. And he says, wait a minute, I'll pay his debt. But what does he do? He purchases you. He is our master. We are his servants. How does this all begin? Sin. So whether we like it or not, this is a debt that has to be paid. This is a debt that has to be paid. I don't know anybody, two people, Elijah and Enoch. Only two I know that haven't paid that debt yet. Okay? But what does Yahweh do to really get us to understand our role? Fear. That's where it starts. Scripture says fear is the beginning of what? Yeah. Now, you know, we kind of want to go to, you know, the in awe fear, right? You know, the feel good, so, right? That's kind of where we want to go with it. It's not where Yahweh went with it. Let's read Exodus 20 and 20. It says, and Moshe said to the people, do not fear, for Elohim has come to prove you, in order that his fear be before you, so that you do not sin. Now, to give you some context of where this is and what's happening, this is in Exodus 20. Anybody know what happens in Exodus 20? There you go. Commands are spoken. What's happening when Yahweh is speaking the commands? What's happening? What do they see? Thunder, lightning. What else?
Smoke.
Fire, smoke. What else? A mountain moving. And they hear his voice like thunder. Y'all, was they in awe like, oh, this is so beautiful. Oh, I just... Was they in awe? They were scared. And if you scared, say you scared. So they said they were scared. What did they say? Moses, please don't talk to us. Please tell him to stop. You go talk to him. Whatever he says, we'll do. Whatever he says. Why? Moses explains it. He says, you know what? Y'all, calm down. Yahweh is not doing this to kill you, but he's doing this so that his fear is before you. He's saying, I'm the master, you're the servant, don't disobey me. I don't care how smart you think you are. How many of y'all know the kind of stuff that they was doing in Egypt? They, I'm sure, was like, man, we built they joints. We can build our own out here too. We got it like that. They were gifted. They were smart. They had a whole lot of stuff. And so when they got out there, y'all know one, what did Korah say? Speak to us too. Who told you you needed to be the ruler over us? And you ain't all that. These people had to be humbled. Yahweh had to humble them. He had to begin them at the stage of servant. Y'all know we all do that. We all go through that. When your children get to a certain age of being able to understand directions, how many of y'all have seen the parents who they go to their kids and run behind them? No, Johnny, don't do that. No, please, Johnny, please, Johnny. No, it's gonna fall, you're gonna break it. Johnny, anybody ever seen those parents? I didn't have them parents, but I seen them parents. I ain't had none. Nah. It was, I'm gonna put fear in your little tail. Look, stop. Why? Because I need to catch you. Why? Because I need you to understand that when I speak to you, you obey. Why? Because you don't understand yet. You don't understand the dangers that you're walking amongst. You don't understand. What do you do with a 3-year-old when you're crossing the street? Clutch that hand. Why? They don't understand the dangers of darting out in the middle of the street without looking. They can't comprehend that. Y'all, that's where we start. People are trying to I'm telling y'all, people are trying to figure out why they should keep the laws of Yahweh when they know that they can eat whatever they want to and they still live, because they've been doing it forever. People want to understand why they should keep the Sabbath when it's only 40 of y'all and they got 500 and 700 and 7,000 people in their church. They're trying to figure out why it is that you feel like doing what Yahweh says is any benefit. Can I say what the scripture says? Can I say what the scripture says? You are stupid children.
That's right.
That's what the scripture says.
That's what it says.
Like you can search it. It's in there. It says you are stupid children. What is he saying? He says you are wise to do evil. It is not in you to do good. You don't understand. You don't understand what life and death are. Why? Because your fathers ate of the tree. There's confusion that's set in between what's good and what's evil. So now, when you make your own decisions, you set yourself up for death. But his commands is stop. Don't do that. Put that down. Don't touch that. Go sit down. Does that all sound familiar? All the kids in here like, oh, no, stop. What am I doing? Sit down. Okay. But the thing is, y'all know sometimes we use our authority because they get on our nerves, right? So y'all know y'all be doing that. Y'all mamas and daddies, they just get on your nerves. You be like, go sit down. I'm tired of you. You say that part real soft. But Yahweh is Yahweh commands us for what? He says, so you do not sin. Why? Because the wage of sin is death. He's trying to keep you alive. His commands, the scripture says his commands are not too heavy. He says they are not so far off that we shall say, who shall go ascend into the heavens to bring them to us? He says they are not so far that we shall say, who shall go beyond the sea? And who shall cause us to hear them? But he says, my word is very near you, in your heart and in your mouth. Why? To do them. Why? You live. Choose ye this day. Life, blessings, curse, death. I say to you, choose life. He has to put that fear in us because we are at the stage of servant master. Whatever you say, we will do. That's what they said in Exodus 20. They didn't say, oh, we're friends tiptoeing through the tulips. They says, please tell him to stop, because if we hear him anymore, we will die. And Moshe says, that's what he wants. He wants you to fear him. Now, whatever I say do, you do. That's what he's done. So let's look at now these relationships. And this is an example first of a good master-servant relationship. So again, we're going to look at examples on both positive and negative. So I want to look at a example first of a master-servant relationship that we can glean from. And I'm a firm witness that a firm believer that you can learn from good and bad. If you don't have the negative to learn from, your learning in the good may not be as complete as you think. So you have to be able to look at the other side of it as well. So let's look at this. Exodus 21, and 5. Exodus 21 and 5. And this is Abraham and Eliezer. Now, Eliezer was given to Abraham when he actually from a Gentile nation. So Eliezer himself is not of Abraham's blood. So you have to understand that. Abraham did not birth Eliezer, nor was Eliezer like a kin, like a brother or uncle or cousin or anything. They were not of the same bloodline. So that's very important to understand when we read this. Exodus 21 and 5. And it says, if the servant truly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, let me not go out free. Then his master shall bring him before Elohim, and shall bring him to the door or to the doorpost. And his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. Now think about this. When Abraham had not had children yet, what was Abraham willing to do? Abraham was willing to make Eliezer his heir. Eliezer was given to Abraham as a servant. Abraham was Eliezer's master. But what are we talking about? Stages of life. This is a place where Eliezer got to, where his understanding of his role as the servant was so intact that his master was willing to make him the heir of all he owned. So let's fast forward to the point where Abraham has children. He has a child. He has Ishmael, who's already been sent off, and he has Yitzḥaq. Now, recall, what did Abraham what responsibility did Abraham put on Eliezer as it pertains to Isaac or Yitzḥaq? Finding his wife. Like, was this a big deal? This was a big deal. The father assigns his son a mate. Why? Bloodline. This thing was serious. Think about the process that they went through. Abraham made Eliezer put his hand under his thigh. And that word, really, if you translate that word back, it says under his groin. And he says, swear to me that you will not take my son back there, but that you will go to my father's house and that you will find a bride. He was serious. Eliezer was a servant, a true servant. So much so that the future of Abraham, before he had children, was going to be his inheritance. And once he had children, still, it was Eliezer's responsibility to ensure the future lineage of Abraham. That's a servant. An obedient servant. One who served his master well. What's a not so great example? Sarah and Hagar. Now, we see in the scripture where it speaks and says that Hagar regarded Sarah in such a way that she was disrespectful. So much so that Sarah was confused on how to handle her and went to Abraham. But let's look at this thing in the book of Jasher, because it gives us a little bit more details into the relationship between Sarah and Hagar. Same scenario. Hagar was given to Sarah as a servant. Sarah was her master or her mistress, as the scripture called it. And we know that Sarah was barren and could not give birth, and thus Hagar was given to him, Abraham, to give birth to a child, which we know as Ishmael. If that be the case, Hagar now has a little extra chip on her shoulder. And so let's read about that. In the book of Jasher, chapter 16, verse 29, says, "And when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she rejoiced greatly, and her mistress was despised in her eyes. And she said within herself, this can only be that I am better. I am better before Elohim than Sarah, my mistress. For all the days that my mistress has been with my Lord," being Abraham, "she did not conceive, but me Yahweh has caused in so short a time to conceive by him." So understand that the Torah speaks, and the understanding then, we know that it was written later, but what they were actually doing was what was written later. And so what it was, if a woman was barren, she could not give a child to her husband, Abraham having no children at that point, and being given that promise, that it was in the rights of that wife to allow for a surrogate. And so the surrogate's job, that was Hagar. Her job was to conceive that child, give birth to that child, and that child now belongs to who?
Sarah.
To Sarah and Abraham. But what is she doing? Y'all want me to put it in more technical terms? More, I'll try to use some really, really good verbiage here. Nanny boo boo, I had a baby. That's what it was. That's what she's doing. And so this is a perfect example of a not so great master and servant relationship. One where the servant stands against the master and says, I am better than you. Let me ask you this question. When we say, I don't have to do that because Paul said, or I don't feel in my spirit that I have to obey this command because, are we saying that our ideas, our ideals, and our way of thinking is better than the Creator's? Are we standing up to Yahweh, the master, as servant and saying, I am better than you? Gotta be careful of that. Thus, obedience to Yahweh is what? Better than sacrifice. And so, again, in this stage, and we're going to continue this on, in this stage, we simply talked about the first level. Yahweh is our master. We are his servants. Where we at right now, it's real simple. Do what he said. You ain't made it to friend yet. You ain't made it to son yet. You ain't made it to bride yet. We are at servant. Do what he said do. Period. Amen.
Hallelujah.